Hey there, guys. Happy Sunday afternoon. Let me flip the camera around. Hello, everyone. So, it is Sunday afternoon, and as usually happens on a Sunday afternoon, I have a little bit of free time to myself, and when I have a chance, I like to hop on Periscope and say hello to my friends who I sometimes don't get a chance to chat with during the week. So, let me go ahead and introduce myself, and hopefully some folks will pop on in a little bit. My name is Lena Sutherland. I'm a homeschool mama to 7 kiddos, and 4 of them are school age. The other 3 are younger. I blog over here at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels. It's hswotrainingwheels.com. And HSWO Training Wheels is also where you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Up until a couple weeks ago, I did a morning Facebook Live, Monday through Friday, called Mama Moments, encouraging words for moms in the morning, just a little like under 5 minutes kind of thing. And I've been off of that for a couple weeks, but I'm gearing up to start back with that tomorrow and to keep going. So if you don't already follow me on Facebook, you can find my page there and like it. Look for notifications, and hopefully I will see you on Facebook Live tomorrow morning. So I'm hopping on here today because yesterday afternoon I scoped a little bit, and it's still up if you want to catch it on my profile. But I talked a little bit about this book, 30 Days to Understanding the Bible, that I have read, and that kind of helped me with reading the Bible with my children and helping them to understand what was going on. And one of the things that I discussed yesterday was that when I read the Bible with my children, we really don't use a curriculum or a workbook or anything else like that. What we do is we really just read and discuss because, it's full of good things to discuss, and especially what's beneficial. I mean, obviously there's much that's beneficial about reading and discussing the Bible, but one of the things that I mentioned yesterday that has been especially helpful to us in reading with the children and with ourselves is that it does an excellent job of illustrating kind of what's going on in the heart behind our actions. And, oftentimes we only think of addressing issues with our children when something comes up, right? So 2 kids are having a fight, and we have to pick apart why they're fighting and what's behind it and what motives are involved and all that. And that happens. You have to do that. But an even better way to address that is to have opportunities ahead of time to talk about things when it's not kind of in the heat of the moment, in the moment of conflict. And so our daily Bible reading has been a great opportunity to talk about those things when there's not a moment of conflict, to just reflect on these ideas and think about them outside of the heat of the moment. So what I wanted to say, though, is that I think oftentimes when people think of using the Bible for character training, they're kind of thinking of these sort of moral lessons, like, see this guy, he did a bad thing, and so then bad things happen to him, so you don't do bad things, and then bad things won't happen to you. Or see this guy, he made the right choices, and then good things happen to him. So, if you make the right choices, then good things will happen to you too. And I think that's a very simplistic way of viewing human life and viewing even what the Bible has to say about human life. So what I wanted to do was just to take one little example and kind of go through like how we might talk about it as a family, just to give you a little bit of an illustration of what that might look like in our family. So I'm going to read the story of Cain and Abel because, it's sort of like the first sibling conflict in the Bible. So here we go. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Okay, so, you might read that story and you might say, okay, so that's a story about why you should be nice to your brother, because if you're not nice to your brother, then you'll get punished. And, you shouldn't kill people because that's bad, and there's, consequences that will come on you if you kill people. And that is very true. You should be nice to people and you should not kill them. But there's so much more going on here, and so much more that's immediately relevant to us and to our children. I don't feel like I'm on the verge of killing anybody right now, but let's look at it like this. So first of all, what's going on in this story? Well, we don't really know what God required of Abel and Cain in terms of offerings. But what we do know is that God was pleased with Cain's offering, or rather with Abel's offering, and he was not pleased with Cain's offering. I believe that God is a good God, and that he's a God who is just and who doesn't just kind of randomly throw lightning bolts at people for, doing things that they had no way of knowing were wrong to do. So it seems clear to me from this passage that God has given some sort of instruction that Abel has done and Cain has not done. So either God has asked them to offer sacrifices of animals, and Cain didn't do that. He offered fruit and vegetables. Or possibly what's being said here is just that the attitudes of Abel and Cain were different. So Abel came with an offering of gladness, and Cain was, prideful or wanting to show off or something. We don't know. It doesn't really say, but we do know that God was pleased with Cain, or rather with Abel, and not with Cain. Okay? And then Cain is angry about that. And God says, "Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted?" And earlier when I'd read that, I'd always thought that this was sort of picky or unreasonable of God. Like, we all struggle, we all try our best, but we fail. And, it's like God saying, "Oh, well, if you want me to accept you, if you want me to be pleased with you, all you have to do is do the right thing." Doesn't that sound like God has this unreasonable standard that, none of us could ever reach? And, it's true, none of us can ever reach perfection. But I think what God is doing here is not saying, "Come on, Cain, it's so easy. All you got to do is be perfect and I'll like you." I think rather what God is doing here is an example of really good parenting, actually. I think that God is talking to Cain, and he's trying to draw him out, and he's trying to help him to examine his own heart, to examine his own thoughts, and to see if what he is telling himself, if Cain's inner dialogue really makes sense, if it really adds up, okay? So the first thing God is saying is, it's not, "Come on, Cain, it's simple, just do all the right stuff and I'll like you." I think what God is saying to Cain is, "Cain, you're angry, and you're telling yourself you're angry because you wanted to please me and I wasn't pleased with you. And so you're telling yourself that I'm just too hard to please, and that your situation of, finding yourself, with me not pleased with you, that situation is my fault because I'm just too unreasonable and I'm too strict. And if I was only more accepting and loving, then you wouldn't find yourself in this awful position. But God says to Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And so I think God is trying to point out to Cain, I gave you instructions about what to do. If you wanted to give an offering that was pleasing to me, I told you already what that would be or what that would look like. Again, we don't have those details, so we don't know what it was that he told Cain. But he's not saying to Cain, you tried, but it wasn't enough. He's saying to Cain, you're telling yourself that you tried, but I'm not sure that your motive really was to try and do what I asked you to do. Because I think if that really had been your motive, you would have been able to do it. You would have been, hey, Jenny, you would have been able to do what I was asking you to do. So the fact that you didn't do it, I don't think it's because the instructions were too confusing or I'm just unreasonable in my measure of how hard you tried. I think the reason that you didn't do it was because you had some other motive in mind. So God is really kind of questioning Cain. He's really talking to him. I'm so glad you're on here live. That's really fun. He's really just, drawing him out. And, if God knows everything, then why does God keep asking Cain questions? Why does he keep asking him questions if he knows everything? Well, it's because God is wanting Cain to look at this information, and examine it from an objective standpoint. And God is helping Cain to examine this information by the questions he asks him. So he says, why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? Like, doesn't God know why Cain is angry? Well, he was wanting Cain to answer. He's wanting Cain to give him that information, and not, this is not like God cross-examining the witness so that he can just pin him to the wall and get him. This is God trying to draw out Cain's motives and trying to enable Cain to look at those things clearly and to think about what's going on there. And so what God says is, look, here's the thing. I don't think you really were number one, motivated with trying to do what I want. God is such a great parent. That's absolutely right. We could never have a better example of parenting than God. God says, look, if you really had wanted to please me, I think you would have done it because I don't think it was that complicated to figure out. Obviously, God's not saying I think. Yes, he knows. But, God says, I told you what to do. So the fact that you didn't do what I asked wasn't because it was too complicated or too confusing or I'm too unreasonable or picky. It's, Cain, I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll recognize that you had some other motive. And so now you're angry because you've served your other motives and it's resulted in me being not pleased with your choices. And so God says, Cain, please be careful, okay? Because if you do well, then I'll be pleased with you. If you don't do well, you're in a dangerous spot. And here's the dangerous spot. The dangerous spot is you've done something that wasn't what you were supposed to do. Again, we don't exactly know the details, but, God says it wasn't what he was supposed to do. And now Cain has a difficult situation to wrestle with, right? Does he acknowledge, what, you're right, I didn't do what I was supposed to do? Or is his pride going to get in the way and make it too difficult for him to admit that it's his own fault that God wasn't pleased with what he did? In which case, he's going to have to find somewhere else to lay that blame, right? If it's not Cain's fault that God isn't pleased with his behavior, then whose fault is it? So he's tried God. He's blamed God for being, unreasonable. And, of course, he can't really get at God. He can't really do anything to God. And so what does he do? Well, he takes it out on Abel. And, the further Cain goes in this line of thinking, the more unreasonable he gets. We maybe could buy his argument if he's saying, like, I'm angry with God because God wasn't pleased with me. Maybe God is, picky. Maybe God is just, has just unreasonable demands. Okay, we can kind of see where Cain is going with that. We understand what he's thinking. But, the further he goes on in that thinking, the more he gets basically irrational, right? So he's angry with God for not being pleased with him. Well, now he's angry with Abel for God being pleased with Abel and not with him. Okay, so again, they talked. We don't know what they talked about. We don't have a lot of the details. But think about it. God was not pleased with Cain. Is that God's fault? Well, God would say no. But is it Abel's fault? I mean, I think even from the narrative we can see it's not Abel's fault. Abel did what he was supposed to do. So the way in which Abel is involved here is that he is receiving what Cain wishes that he could have received, which is God being pleased with him. So the strain between the brothers isn't really because of something that the brothers did to each other or something that Abel did to Cain. Abel didn't really do anything to Cain. The struggle between the brothers is really because of something that's going on the inside of Cain. Cain has this issue. He's done something that isn't pleasing to the Lord. He doesn't want to admit that it was his choice that got him to that place, and instead wants to blame God or Abel for his, feeling out of step with God. And so, ultimately he murders his brother. And again, God is asking him questions. God is saying, where's your brother Abel, right? Like when I ask one of my children, where's your brother? It's because I don't know. So I'm wondering if they know. But obviously that's not the position God is in. God is not asking Cain, where's Abel? Because God lost track of him and is wondering if he's in the backyard or not. God is asking Cain, where's Abel? Because he wants to help Abel to think about, he wants to draw out from Cain's response about Abel. And again, Cain is basically like, I don't know, I'm not in charge of him. And so we see all throughout that Cain's thinking is not clear on this issue. And God had warned him from the beginning, watch out. Okay, you didn't do what I asked you to do. But you need to be careful because it's going to get worse if you don't stop now and make a change. And it goes on from there, and what we see about God is that God actually, gives Cain a consequence, but it's not really the consequence that he deserves. I mean, he killed his brother. He really would deserve in return to be killed. But instead, God gives him a much lesser consequence and even gives him a protection against being killed. So, even in the face of Cain's wrong choice, and adding on to that wrong choice by committing murder, God responds with mercy and with protection. And so, as we read this and we talk to our children about it, if this is just a story about, like, don't kill your brother because then you'll get in trouble, it may seem very remote and unrelated and not applicable to the children or to me. But what's happening in this story is, rather, God is showing us what our hearts look like, and helping us to understand that really what's at the root of everything is the motives, not necessarily the outward actions, although those definitely matter. I mean, killing your brother, he's dead now. But it began with this heart issue. And so, this kind of thing, when you kind of like zoom out and look at the broad brushstrokes of what's happening here, it happens in our home all the time, right? So a child has something that they're supposed to be doing. Maybe they're supposed to be, folding and putting away pajamas in their bedroom. And they decide, wouldn't it be so wonderful of me to make everybody's bed? And I'm going to set up their pillows, and I'm going to put stuffed animals on every pillow, and I'm going to do this and that. And then I come up to the room and I say, well, why haven't you put away the pajamas? I asked you to put away the pajamas. You haven't done it. Well, Mommy, look, I made the beds. All the beds are made. And look how I put stuffed animals on every pillow and every, and what they're wanting me to be really pleased and really impressed with them. But, they're wanting it for maybe not quite the right reason. Like, the right thing would be, I'm a part of a family. The family has needs. I need to be participating in the needs of the family. The part of that I've been asked to do right now is put away this laundry. I'm going to work on that. Now, is it a bad thing to make beds? Is it a bad thing to see something that's needed and take initiative to do it? Not at all. But when you're supposed to be in the middle of another job, then you can't really say, my number one goal was to please mommy. Because if their number one goal really had been to please mommy, what would they have done? Well, they would have put away the laundry that they'd been asked to put away. And so when they've done something else, we can say, I appreciate that. I understand why you wanted to do that, but let's back up a minute and let's ask, if what you really most wanted was to please mommy, then the thing to do would have been to do the thing that mommy asked you to do. And then after that, you could have made the beds, or you could have asked me if you could stop and make the beds or whatever. But it's not that making the beds is so terrible. It's that you have to ask yourself, was your goal really, really to please mommy? Because I don't think mommy was very unclear or confusing about what was the right thing to do or what I'd asked you to do. It was that maybe you had something else in mind, like, putting away the laundry would have been, a normal thing to do. And I wanted to do something extraordinary because I wanted, extra attention or extra praise or something like that. So, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in there, a lot of good fodder for conversation. But, if your child is expecting you to walk in the room and say, what? You're amazing. I am so proud of you. You are great. You're like my number one star child. And instead you have to say, sweetheart, what I really asked you to do was to fold the pajamas and put them away. That's really what you were supposed to be working on right now. Then they're going to face a moment of temptation, right? They wanted mommy to be like over the moon, jumping up and down for joy at their amazing project that they'd been working on. And, again, they're little. I'm not saying that we should just be, all out critical or something. But, if mommy has to offer some correction in that moment, there's going to be an opportunity for temptation for them. There's going to be an opportunity for them to be angry with mommy. Like, it's because mommy is so unreasonable. Mommy is so hard to please. Like, here I made these beds and she's not pleased with me. So clearly, there's just no point trying to please mommy because she's super unreasonable. And we need to help them and talk them through, okay, honey, listen, mommy wasn't unclear. This was not complicated or confusing. It wasn't hard to understand. But I think you just had other ideas in mind. And I know you wanted to please mommy, and that's good. But the best way to please mommy is just to do the thing that you were asked to do. If that really was your main goal, was to please mommy. And then, of course, the same kind of things can come into play. They can be angry with mommy. They can be resentful towards other children. Maybe they feel like, well, you told him to go fold and put away socks, and all he did was fold and put away socks. You told me to go fold and put away pajamas, but I made all the beds. So I should be like extra favored. I should be extra, admired and adored as a child. When really, the child who just folded and put away the socks as he was asked wasn't doing anything flashy or outstanding, but he was doing just the simple thing that he was asked to do. And so, to recognize the fact that when a child has to be corrected for whatever reason, and no matter how gently you offer that correction, there's the potential there that he's going to not want to accept responsibility for his choices, but rather to find somebody else to blame, like mommy for being just, picky and unreasonable, or sibling with whom mommy was pleased because they did whatever was the thing that they were asked to do. So that's just a little illustration, or a very long illustration, of how we might read and discuss a passage of Scripture together. Hey there. So if you're just joining us, you might want to go back and watch the replay. But what I'm really hoping to illustrate is just that there's so much good stuff. And, none of us is going to be able to read a passage and just, get out of it every morsel that there is to get out of it. But that it's a place to start. You read it, you discuss what you understand, you go from there. And then, as with everything in homeschool, it's not that we as parents have arrived and we know it all and we're now distributing all of our knowledge and information and downloading it to our children. We are continually in the process of learning. They are continually in the process of learning, and we're doing it together. So that's why for our Bible study, we just read and talk about the Bible. And again, as I said, it's not that I don't have resources on hand. I just haven't found a need for using a curriculum like a workbook or Bible lessons or something. I did read 30 Days to Understanding the Bible, which is just a good little, not understanding the Bible like 30 Days to Mastering the Bible, but just it gives this great little overview of like kind of the 12 eras of biblical history, and just breaks down some of the things that are helpful, kind of like the big picture scope and sequence, so that you can understand the details when you're down in them. So, okay, so that's all I've got for today. Again, you can find me over at HSWO Training Wheels, and that's also where you can find me on Facebook. I will be starting again with my Mama Moments tomorrow, so I hope to catch some of you all over there on Facebook when I do Facebook Live tomorrow. And I hope you have a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Thanks. You're very welcome. Thanks for viewing, visiting. Talk to you later.